University and 10th.
Who doesn't like long meetings, really?
Oh, and okay.
Yeah, we have a friend who works there.
Yeah, no, we went through this a few months ago where we got really lucky. My husband was breaking down boxes, and there were some packing peanuts in one of the boxes. And I was in the shower, and he came back, and he said, "We just ate some packing peanuts." I went, "Oh, okay, what do we do now?" And so he called the vet. The vet said, "Take him to the emergency vet." So we got him in the car. We brought the peanuts with us, and we got him in there. And I called on the way down, and when we got him in there, we filled out the intake sheet, and she says, "Well, do you know if the peanuts are solvable?"
Oh, were they the cornmeal ones?
And I said, I have no idea. I didn't even know such a thing existed.
Did you
But I have
happen
the
to
peanuts
notice
here. And
there's
she
a few
said,
places
fill
this
out the
happens,
forms, and
On Google Maps, when you look up,
that's
in some
okay.
cases,
And I'll
houses
Like
test
watered
this
out.
and see. And so she came
the
back,
house
and sure enough, they
is
dissolved in water. And
Oh,
she
you
said,
got lucky.
he's going to be fine, just,
I didn't realize that.
see that?
We
Yeah.
had somebody house sitting for us.
See this one right here?
So it was like right after we got back that we were
Right there.
Was it
mystery
like a
house. I guess you
plastic
can just
bag, like a
petition, have them-
reusable one, or like
I
a
know they
sandwich
do that,
bag?
like if there's,
You don't know?
they're doing a lot for people, whenever they
How are
capture
you?
people. Maybe there's like a bunch of people standing out there, but they do the roof too. So,
They must have petitioned.
yeah, they probably
It's in- yeah.
asked them to. Yeah, I heard an interesting article. Because of the whole like
History.
yeah, and just the
And is it the guest one?
privacy of
Okay.
information now. Okay.
So, Ann, do you guys cancel meetings if there's only commissioners?
Yes, we would have to, because we wouldn't have a quorum. Yeah, we wouldn't have enough to vote. It's senior year, right?
There we go. Okay.
Latino graduation sashes event. That was pretty fun. So it says like Albany 2017 and these awesome.
All right, I'm going to call to order tonight's good evening, and I'd like to welcome everybody. And I'm going to now call to order the July 12th meeting of the Albany Planning and Zoning Commission. Would you please join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, can we please have a roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Jennings? Here. Commissioner Minotti?
Here?
Chair Geeson Fields?
Here. Okay, our next item up is ex parte communication disclosures. Is there any disclosures?
None for me.
Nope.
Okay, and none for myself. So I will close that item, and next is our consent calendar. Excuse me. The consent calendar items are considered to be routine and/or administerial. Thus, everything on the consent calendar will be considered and voted on by a single vote of the commission. A consent calendar item may be pulled and discussed separately if someone from the audience or a commissioner would like to remove the item for discussion. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to have an item pulled from the consent calendar? Okay, and tonight I think the only thing on the consent calendar is the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes from June 28th. Seeing no one, I have a couple very minor edits that I can just quickly tell you. And then if commissioners have any other edits, they
I
can.
just had a question, but go ahead.
Okay. I'd just like to add, let's see here, page 5, line 17. Between will and decide, the words will and decide, I want to add the property owner will work with the neighbor to decide on whether the fence should extend or not to the front or how far it extends. And then page 6, line 5, I just wanted to remove the word metal before railing, because I was actually just referring to a wood railing, I believe. And I just wanted to also add a comment, just kind of in general, that I made a comment where I asked the applicant to revise the submitted documents to make sure that the drawings presented accurately reflected the project as proposed, and that they were internally coordinated. So I know that was a comment that we all asked of them. Those are my only edits.
I had a question on the El Cerrito with what the intent was on the comment about bike parking. I think it was about bike parking. That was on page 2, line 33. Residential uses are required to provide a minimum of 1 short-term bike parking space per 20 units with a minimum of 1.2 spaces per unit.
1.2?
It says 1 short-term bike parking space per 20 units with a minimum of 1.5 spaces per unit. Is that still talking about bike parking there, do you know? It
I
uses,
think we're actually talking about vehicle parking. I seem to have a recollection that it was 1.5 spaces per unit, per vehicles.
so it just wasn't clear because it's talking
Yeah.
about bike parking, and I think you were jumping to then vehicle parking.
I think that's correct.
So that could just be clarified. And if you're ready, I'm happy to move this with those
Okay.
changes.
Yeah, great. Okay, so there has been a motion to approve the minutes with the noted changes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Jennings. There's been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the meeting minutes from June 28th, 2017 have been approved with those comments. Our next item up is the public comment period. The public comment period is available for anyone desiring to address the commission on an item that is not on our agenda. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Under the Brown Act, the commission is only able to receive your comments, and since the item is not on the agenda. Therefore, such items are referred to the staff for their comments and may be included in a future commission agenda for a full discussion. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the commission on an item that's not on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public comment period. And our next item up is the zoning code amendments to chapter 20.24.
Yes. This is the second time you're looking at the draft code changes to section 2024 development standards and 2100 procedures. Previously, you looked at this at the first meeting in June, gave us some feedback, and so we're before you again this evening seeking adoption of a resolution to make a formal recommendation to the City Council for these changes. Just to give you a background snapshot, the zoning code was comprehensively updated in 2004. From time to time, amendments are required as part of broader policy implementation, consistency with state laws, or general clarification. As this commission is aware of some recent review of residential remodel applications as well as other policy review, highlighted areas of the code which required refining as well as consistency with state law. The sections in question include the floor area ratio language clarification with average perimeter height and stair calculations, reference to petition-initiated zoning changes, language consistency with Government Code Section 65090, which is public notification, the accessory structure review threshold, and codifying deck review as part of design review. So this is the language that we've come back to you with tonight, and this is been modified based on your feedback from the meeting in June, where the text highlighted in red is the feedback that we received. So the last portion of this provision, measurement of height shall be taken from existing grade conditions at the top of the existing finished floor of the first main or story above. And then we've included an additional sentence, the average perimeter height shall not be altered to achieve a height less than 5 feet. And the intent behind this is to capture existing conditions when calculating floor area ratio. We didn't touch the language related to the stairs calculation, so we've left it at calculating the entire building envelope and then deducting the stair footprint for a maximum deduction of up to 60 square feet. So we've omitted the language related to atrium loft or study. This was the petition-initiated zoning provision that our city attorney had flagged and asked to be stricken from the code altogether. So this is just simply the strikeout language. As I mentioned at the previous hearing, we, by law, are required to notice within 300 feet of a subject site. We do that as a matter of practice. However, the code is out of compliance with that, so we're simply including this change to have consistency with state law. This is the review table, which designates authority either to the Community Development Director or the Planning and Zoning Commission for design review. Currently, accessory structures that are 200 square feet or less go directly to the commission. We've changed that threshold to 400 to be consistent with an addition or alteration to the main structure on the property. And then also, we've codified, or are proposing to codify that decks which are 36 inches or more above grade be identified in here. We've done that as a matter of practice, but would feel more comfortable if this was simply contained in the code. And with that, we have Resolution 2017-04, which would forward a recommendation to the Albany City Council to amend those sections of the city's municipal code.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff about this before I open up to the public?
I did have one question on the stairwell area. Can you go back to that slide? It just it calls out exterior, and I was a little confused.
Yeah, so what happens is sometimes deductions are made from the interior, but when we calculate FAR, we do it from the perimeter, the exterior perimeter, so that the complete building envelope is captured. Right now, it's not specified in the code, so we've had some applicants argue that the deduction should be taken from the interior measurements rather than the exterior measurements. And so the intent behind noting exterior is that we're looking at the full building envelope when we do FAR calculations.
Okay.
If I understand correctly, I'm probably just repeating what you said, but so basically you just take from the exterior of the building footprint, and so even if it's an internal stairway that's not on an exterior wall, take that.
Right. Exactly, yeah. So if you had an interior staircase that's not connected to an exterior wall, but it's encompassed within that building envelope, you would take just the footprint of the staircase.
Okay, great. Any questions, staff?
No questions.
Okay. With that, I will open this up to the public. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to address the commission on this topic? Okay. And seeing nobody, I will close the public comment period on the zoning code amendments and bring it back to the commission for a full discussion. Unless you want to start, I just have one comment.
Yeah, I had one as well, but go for it.
Okay, the only thing I noticed was in terms of the floor height and the FAR code language. I know we mentioned or talked about putting in something in the language to establish a time of when that's calculated. So I was just thinking, are we able to go to the slide with the language? And I mean, I was quickly just going to throw out there, I think this was kind of what we had talked about last time this came up, but just adding the language between the word taken and from, where measurement of height shall be taken, to adding something, I don't know what the other commissioners would think, but something that says taken and established prior to submittal for design review. and verified by community development director. I don't know, I guess maybe not that exact language, but something that
Yeah.
locks in a time when they actually calculate it.
Right, so I think existing was probably trying to capture that idea, but we could nail it down more precisely.
Yeah, I guess
But
I'm just-
existing when.
Yeah, yeah. I guess, guys, I guess my one hesitation is that if somebody reads the code language, they could then just say, okay, let me just make some alterations and then go in and say, well, this is existing. So, I don't know. I guess that's what I was trying to address, but I don't know if that's an effective way to do that.
Maybe would a simpler approach be to say existing grade conditions at the time an application is filed?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that might have been what we talked about last.
Right. I mean, yeah, you still might have the problem of people doing things
Yeah.
without permits, but
Yeah.
that's kind of outside the scope of this, so.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
I guess, yeah. I mean, I would be happy with that
Yeah.
little addition.
Okay.
I think that's a good addition to include in there.
Okay.
Otherwise, that was my only sort of comment. Everything else, I'm willing to support and approve.
I had one other edit to this same language that I think we talked about at the last meeting, that I would, on that last sentence, I just want to make sure we're not giving the impression that this is actually a prohibition on changing the existing perimeter height. It's just that for purposes of calculating FAR, you can't change the existing perimeter height. And so, to the extent that could cause confusion, I would just recommend adding at the beginning of that sentence something to the effect of, for purposes of calculating FAR pursuant to this section.
Yep, great.
And I'm open to
No,
amendments on the language, but I do want to make sure we're not.
Yeah. No, I think that makes it crystal clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great addition.
yeah, good catch. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like a prohibition.
all right. Any other comments on any of the other provisions? Okay. Otherwise,
Make those edits.
I think we're good. So I guess we need to make a motion to approve these and forward them to the city council? Is that okay?
That's correct. Yep.
Let's do
So,
that too.
sure, I would love to make a motion.
Thank you.
I would like to make a motion to adopt Planning and Zoning Commission Resolution 2017-04 with the amendments to the FAR language that we discussed tonight, forwarding a recommendation to the City Council to amend sections 2024 Development Standards and 2100 Procedures of the Albany Municipal Code.
Great, there's been a motion. I'll second it. So there's been a motion and seconded.
We had public comment on this topic.
Yeah, nobody, we had public comment and nobody, nobody.
Just very quiet.
I mean, I'll just be safe, because I think we might have had somebody come in. We're talking about item 7-1 zoning code amendments to chapter 20-24 and 20.100. Is there anybody in the public audience who'd like to comment on these? Okay. Yeah, okay, so the public comment period is closed. There has been a motion and a second to approve the code revisions with our amendments. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Yeah, you're excused. So they have been approved, and I guess we'd like to recommend them to the city council. Our next item up is a planning application 17-041, temporary use permit for the 2017 Albany haunt at 1048 Peralta Avenue.
Yes, so before you this evening is the application for the 2017 Albany Haunt at 1048 Peralta. This is an event that's occurred, this is now going into its fourth year and its third year with permit from the permit review conducted by the city. Just to give you some background, this is an annual event that's conducted, at least for the last 2 years, it's been in the backyard of the residents at 1048 Peralta. There's a suggested admittance fee, which is charged to attendees with a portion of the proceeds that are donated to the county food bank. There's also collection bins, a canned food drive, that sort of thing also associated with this. In 2015, this came to the commission on an appeal. Ultimately, the appeal was denied and the application approved. So the event was held the weekend of October 30th and 31st. In 2016, this came back to the commission again, and the event last year was held on Saturday, October 29th, and Monday, the 31st, Halloween. In both instances, we didn't have any issues or calls for service, anything like that associated with the event. This is the street view of the house as it stands today. In 2015, staff observed the event and took noise level measurements, which were approximately 60 decibels. There was on-street parking, which was pretty much at capacity from Peralta to Sonoma Street. That year, there was a fair number of media trucks that were parked on street that remained idle and caused some, caused some little obstruction. However, last year we didn't have that issue. It was a much lower key event, so it was less of an issue. Just to give you the background on the code, there are provisions in 2020-090 associated with live entertainment events, which requires a minor use permit and is limited to 2 days. Generally, this is processed on a staff level. However, given the previous appeal, we simply take it to the commission and have a more formal public hearing. So that you have an opportunity to review it, and we have an opportunity for public comment. So for this year's request, the applicant is requesting to have the event on Saturday, October 28th from 6 to 10, and again on Halloween night from 6 to 10. Last year, they voluntarily restricted construction to commence at the end of September and limiting the work to a 5-week window. They've proposed the same thing again this year, limiting work to the end of September up to shortly before the event. They also have dress rehearsals as part of that the weekend prior. So this year they have one rehearsal slated for October 31st and one for October 27th. And this is the site plan with the path of travel. So every year the scope changes a little bit, but in general, and Sam will correct me, because the path is, I do remember walking through this, the path is a little bit different this year, but it does encompass, the bulk of the yard. This is the entrance, and then attendees walk all the way to the back. There is a means of egress through Terrace Park, if necessary in the event of an emergency. And then the exit is on the other side of the house, and the neighbors to the north allow egress on their driveway to the sidewalk for exiting. We've included the same construction and event-specific related conditions, which have been used for the past 2 years. In general, we've found that works pretty well, so we've just decided to continue them going forward. However, we did include 2 additional conditions, one of which is to obtain a business license for the event. That comes from our city treasurer. And then the other condition is that in the event the installation is it doesn't pass the final inspection, we would have to charge for a re-inspection to account for staff time. So ideally, this would be complete and this would be a non-issue, but we've put it in there just in case. There was some correspondence that was received. That was forwarded to you electronically. We also have it in the binder at the back of the room for anyone who's interested. And with that, we recommend approval for this year's event permit.
Are there any questions of staff about this item? No?
Yeah, just a quick question. I was just curious, what is the threshold or requirement to get a business permit, a business license? Is there like amount of money that you're taking in that triggers the requirement?
It's not tied to any specific dollar amount, but there is it's in the master fee schedule. There is a business license fee for amusement and live entertainment events that are held within the city limits. The only exemption that exists is if there was a properly licensed 501c3, that's the only exemption. We still require the license, but we can waive the fee.
So even if they weren't charging admission or asking for voluntary donations,
Right.
it would still be a requirement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll have your moment to speak.
Okay. That's all.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, and with that, if there are no other questions of staff about this, if the applicant would like to present the project to the commission, that'd be great. Tell us anything that I think might help us understand it.
Anne summarized it pretty well, but I just had a little speech. Good evening, commissioners. Before I begin, I would like to thank you for your part in last year's event and making it safe and good for our community. Last year's event was our best year yet, as we were able to raise almost 5,000 meals worth of food and monetary donations for our partners at the food bank. And this year we have worked extra hard in developing an event for our final, and developing a plan for our final event that will raise the production value without impacting safety or having detrimental effects on the surrounding community. The Albany Haunt serves as a valuable opportunity for students to learn useful skills and contribute to their community in a safe, inclusive environment. Thank you for reviewing our proposal for the final year of the event.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Any other questions?
So this is my first time being on the commission. While this has come before the commission, I was just wondering if you could take 1 minute to tell us a little background about this. Was this your idea? Is this something you've been doing throughout high school and it's ending because you're graduating, or what?
Essentially that, but
What's the
yes.
story?
So in my, it's actually been, this is the 5th year of the event, or I guess that's, Anne phrased it in a way that confused me. I wasn't sure if, she said we had done it for 4 years before, if this was the 4th year, but regardless, this is the 5th year of the event. I started it when I was in 8th grade with some of my friends that you see here, and it's slowly grown into a really great event that teaches kids skills from all sorts of things like pneumatics and carpentry and sewing and electronics and programming and actor training and every single thing you can imagine, and painting and scenic design and all those fancy things. And also at the same time, we're able to bring together our local community from the surrounding blocks and all of Albany, and of course a few people from Berkeley and El Cerrito come as well. And they all come together and have a lot of fun and go through our maze. And then with that, all of the money that wasn't spent on materials, or of course now permits, goes towards the food bank.
Okay. And so how many kids have been involved in building and producing this event every year?
At first it was like me and my friend Kai over there and pretty much just us, but now it's, there's like about a little over a dozen actors in the attraction, and there's about 3 dozen people that help in various aspects of it.
Cool.
So we're very proud.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
I don't think so.
Am I allowed to ask questions, or that's, no?
You can, we won't necessarily respond.
Yeah, I was just wondering, so I guess Anne kind of laid it out. So it's a business license that you get, and I have to get it if I get this, if this passes. And the business license is not actually for the financial aspect of a business, but just for the aspect of having the event, which seems to be what this permit is for. But I'm kind of confused as to where they overlap. If anybody could explain that to me.
I mean, I can take a stab at it if you
Yeah,
like.
I'm happy to as well.
Yeah, please.
Basically, the permit that you receive through planning and zoning regulates the functional aspects of your event. So, looking at this from egress and safety and that sort of thing, and hours and installation, so forth. And then the business license is simply the fact that you're having the event. There's a fee that's charged for that.
Okay, awesome, thank you. That makes a lot more sense than what I've seemed to.
Did you want to add something?
And correct me if I'm wrong, please, Ann. And I think also, it's not necessarily that you actually charge a fee, but the fact that you could charge a fee. And because you're technically not a nonprofit organization. And so because of that, the city has to treat you as if you're a business.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a rock and a hard place with that one, because
Yeah.
it'd be 800 to get the nonprofit permit, and then 400 for this, so it's like I might as well give in to not having a nonprofit and not having to have board meetings. But, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, I will open it up to the public for the public comment period.
And I do have 2 public speaker cards.
Great.
First speaker is Daniel Prescher, and the second speaker is Ron Rosenbaum.
All right, great, thank you.
My job last year on Halloween was I managed the line. And it was rather interesting because I was out there the Halloween before managing the line. And partly what I wanted to do tonight was give you some feedback so that you'll know, not just for this, but for other events. The media circus brought people in from out of the area, and they were looking for a fight, which I was really surprised about. It was actually much harder that year to control the crowd and keep them where they were supposed to. And I finally realized all these people we're having trouble with aren't the Albany people. They're actually brought in by the media. Without the media last year, it went smooth as could be. We got the line going, everybody was happy. I was where the kids came out, except for one little girl, everybody had a great time. She did not have a great time. I don't think we're gonna have her back. I will say the project has been extremely educational to the kids. Whether you approve it, don't approve it, they've actually learned now about how you have to get licenses, how the whole project works, about how you have to actually build things and how there are standards for them. And it's been truly an inspirational project to them, and to see how it works and to see the kids go through it and stuff. I will also say, Sam has said it's his last year. I've been drilling this in his head since the last one. It really does need to be the last year, because he really needs to move on in life, and he's done being a student. And you know, it is an issue to the neighborhood. It is a couple of nights of a large number of cars, a large number of people. Everybody has a good time and gets along, but there comes a time when you're grown up and you move on. So if he applies next year, I'll come here and say, no, don't give him the permit. He's got to go. So, but it actually works extremely well. If you're around it, you'll see that with the restrictions and the years gone by, things have gotten much smoother and actually gotten much better. So I would ask that you approve the project.
Thank you. And we have another speaker.
Good evening. Ron Rosenbaum, 1063 Peralta Avenue. So I'm a neighbor. I'm a retired educator. I retired as principal of Albany High School 10 years ago. Returned as interim principal at Albany High School this last spring to try to help with certain problems that came about. And I'm retired president of the Albany Unified School District Board of Education. So the points that I've come as an educator is that these are just important things that these young people do to give back to the community. Last year, I didn't make it because something was going on in my home, but I didn't even notice any crowds or anything. It just seemed so calm compared to the year before because of the media circus that was going on. What I would urge you is there's not a penny that these young people take, and they were my students, by the way, this last spring, so we've been talking about this, especially with Sam. Sam's like, oh, they're doing this and they're doing that. They don't take any money out of this at all. The only funds that they use that don't go to the food bank are for supplies. All the volunteers, they're not only students, but there are adults that volunteer, and it's just been a great thing for the neighborhood. What I would urge the city and this board to do is to waive the costs of the fees for these permits. I sort of understand the business permit. They're not a nonprofit, but they are raising money for a nonprofit. And I know the fees have gone up for their permits as well. I would really urge you to consider waiving the costs of those permits, giving them the permit, but waiving the costs, because it's basically taking funds away from what they're turning over to the food bank. If that's not possible, I'm willing to at least donate part of the new fee as an individual and donate $200 to this cause. So thank you for that consideration. I really appreciate your support for Sam and all these incredible young people. It's something that we don't always see in education. I've been an educator in the East Bay since 1971. So it's a while. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to address the commission on this item? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for a full discussion. I guess I'll just, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, please.
I'm a neighbor too. I live right down the street, 1028 Peralta, and it just has I don't know, a wonderful community feeling, and it's festive, and it just feels very nice to see people coming with their kids and really enjoying it and donating food. And I think it raises awareness in families that are more fortunate than many, that you give back in many different ways. And it makes me kind of sad too to see the obstacles that Sam has faced over the years with certain individuals, and just I agree that they're not making there's nothing selfish about it at all, as I'm sure you realize too, but just any kind of assistance and sort of reinforce the good energy behind this enterprise would be appreciated.
Thank you. And if you can, ma'am, afterwards, you could fill out a speaker card and just give that to Ann. That'd be appreciated. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to address the commission on this item? Okay. With that, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for a full discussion. I'm more than happy to start the conversation. No, I think it's a great project. I think Ann was referring to the fact that you had a permit for 4 years, but you have run it for 5. I think that's what she was getting at. But I've gone to it in the last 2 years, and I had a great time at it. The production value is very high, and it's all of the actors are local students, and there's always a great turnout. So I support the project, and I also appreciate the fact that just based on the plan that you gave of the backyard, it looks like you're keeping with the intent of having or trying to sort of push it away from your neighbor's property who in the past had complained about the project. And so I appreciate that you have the sort of least loud parts of it, the actual entrance over there by their adjacent property. So that's good. And yeah, I went last year, and there were a heavy turnout, but it seemed well controlled and supervised. So assuming it goes along the same lines, I have no problem supporting the project. My one comment was when I read the staff report, I didn't find the noise standards attached.
Yeah, we have our noise ordinance, which we use as a matter of practice.
Okay, just because I thought it referenced that said it would be attached, and so I just want to make sure that
we can attach that with the notice of action.
that the applicant has that information should they need it. Those are my only real comments.
Okay. So I want to echo what Commissioner Giesenfields has said. I have not had the pleasure of attending this event in the past, and I had heard a rumor the last time I was at Terrace Park that there's this cool haunted house on the other side of the fence, but I haven't seen it myself. So hopefully I'll take my kids who just showed up in the audience this year, and they can check it out. But it does sound like a great, kind of experiential learning project for you guys, and I'm glad to hear there is neighborhood support for the project as well. I think the absence of, it sounds like there were no complaints, at least last year, relating to that event, and the fact that we didn't receive any correspondence that any neighbors were concerned about it as a positive sign. So I'm certainly in favor of approving the temporary use permit. And as to the business license and fees, I'm sensitive to the fact that you all are trying to raise money for a good cause. If it were up to me, I would say just let him have the license. I don't know that it really is up to us on the Planning Commission. I don't know that I doubt we even have authority to actually waive that fee. I do think we could recommend that the Finance Department consider waiving the fee, and I would be willing to make that kind of recommendation in adopting the conditions. But yeah.
And the last, I'll just sort of comment I'd like to add to piggyback on what the Commissioner said was that one suggestion I would put out there, which I don't know if you've explored, is trying to partner with a local nonprofit organization like the Albany Education Foundation or the Albany Community Foundation, and they could act as basically you'd be operating through them and using their nonprofit status. And so that might be a way for you to avoid the business license fee.
Or the food bank.
Or the food bank even.
Yeah, there's certain issues in terms of liability.
Yeah.
There's a lot of logistical things with dealing with the food bank just because they are such a large organization.
Mm-hmm.
They actually provide meals to I think it's 1 in 5 people in the Bay Area. So they're so large and they're so great, but putting on an event for them logistically would not be reasonable given how many millions of dollars are going in and out of their pockets.
Yeah. No, and which makes total sense. And so maybe
I do like your suggestion for smaller groups.
Yeah,
but
maybe
then it's
look
like,
at-
do I abandon my friends at the food bank? I really
Well,
enjoy
not
their
that you have
cause.
to abandon them. You can still have the proceeds go to them or donate it. But there are simply organizations like because you're a student and teachers seem to support it, like the Albany Education Foundation, which basically, and I don't want to speak for them, but basically you just use their name to get the nonprofit status.
That sounds like a good idea.
What's that?
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. That sounds like
Good
good.
idea.
And
Good
so,
idea.
so maybe that might help you. Did you have any comments, Commissioner Monaghan?
I just wanted to say I appreciate your guys' entrepreneurship. I do think it's a great thing that you're building teams and finding something to work on together. I live not too far away, and I think it's something most of the people in the neighborhood look forward to each year. So I'm going to be supporting it.
Great. Unless there are any other comments, I guess I'm open to a motion, or I can make a motion. Come on, I'll do that. I'll do it. I'll make a motion to approve planning application 17-041, a temporary use permit for 2017 Albany Haunt at 1048 Peralta, as presented in the staff report. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, your project has been approved. There is a 14-day appeal period, so please be aware and mindful of that. Otherwise, your project has been approved. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
And our next item up is planning application 17-038, design review for a second-story addition at 821 Cornell, which is now a study session, I believe.
Correct, yeah. So big gear shift here, but this is a design review for a second-story addition, 821 Cornell. Some background on the property. The subject property is a 5,000 square foot lot with a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 1,394 square foot house built in 1925. City records show miscellaneous minor work done to the property, including a new garage, roof repair, bathroom remodels, dry rot removal and repair, and more dry rot removal and repair. Some additional background information: on July 25th, 2006, the homeowners received design review approval for a 449 square foot first floor addition and a 1,118 square foot second story addition by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The project was abandoned and the project scope was not carried out. Here's a street view from Google of the property as it looks today. Project request. The applicant is seeking design review approval for an expansion and remodel of the ground floor and a new second-story addition. The project scope includes demolition of the existing detached garage structure, approximately 300 square feet of new area to the ground level, along with interior remodeling and reprogramming of the rooms, a new 394 square foot attached two-car garage, and a 1,103 square foot second-story addition, which will accommodate 3 bedrooms and a bathroom and master suite. Here's the existing elevation, and here's what's proposed. The craftsman style of the home is proposed to remain. The applicant has submitted a landscape plan illustrating the landscaping improvements to the property. Parking. Parking is currently provided by the existing garage and driveway of the home. The existing garage structure is proposed to be demolished. A new 2-car garage is proposed to be attached to the main dwelling. The existing curb cut will be removed and will be aligned with the new proposed 2-car garage. And the curb cut as proposed is 15 feet and 6 inches in width. We received 2 email correspondences that were forwarded to the commission. The project is categorically exempt from CEQA, and staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission review the proposed project and provide feedback to the applicant and staff. That's it.
Great.
Oh yeah, and because the story poles were not installed in time, so we can't take action on it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any, excuse me, questions for staff about this project? No? Okay. With that, I will ask if the applicant is here, if you'd like to address the commission and just sort of discuss the design, what guided you, what led you to that, and anything that you think might help us understand the project. Sure.
Good evening. My name is Basilia Macias, and I'm the architect representing Hyder and his family at 821 Cornell. What drove this project, of course, mostly was the need for space in his growing family. They have 3 very growing children, and they needed space, and they definitely needed some larger bedrooms and some storage. And they looked to the craftsman style only because it is something we see in Albany, very much so, on the block. We definitely wanted to upgrade the look of the house as it stood now. Since he's purchased it, I don't think he's been overly pleased with the overall aesthetics of it. But he's had this idea of having this, more bedrooms for the kids, better bathrooms, and this deck off of the upstairs area to enjoy the outside a little bit more. Definitely the parking issue was something he understood was going to be an issue, and being that, again, his children are growing and they have more than 2 vehicles or 1 vehicle on the property now, a 2-car garage seemed to be the best way to handle that without being a burden on the off-street parking load of the street as it is. Definitely we came to Albany very early on, or somewhat early on in our process prior to submittal, just to get the feedback from Christopher and Ann. We're trying to soften it up. We understand definitely that we're growing in mass in relation to what the house used to be, but we've also been very trying to pay a lot of attention to how that mass addresses the street, trying to make it so that only the area sort of over the 2-car garage area is the only one that is a two-story area that is up against the street, while the back portion where the bedrooms are is recessed quite a bit from the front facade. The other thing is we wanted to break up the front facade with the shed roof, hip/shed roof there along the front and over the porch entry there. Again, we wanted to be very conscious of the scale of the other houses on that street. One of the things we really liked about what the house has to offer now was it's got this nice little trellis there over the front, over the parking area as it is, and we spoke a little bit to planning, and they kind of wanted to see that too. So So we incorporated that as to something we'd like to see kind of carry along the front of the entire house. Working with the landscape architect, at that point, we also asked them to, right now, we did want them to kind of bring in mind that we'd like some kind of vine, some kind of a green trellis to be the first thing you see when you approach this house, as opposed to the two-story facade. With that, which is what we're proposing. The other thing is we did modernize the windows, even though we kept it in the Craftsman style, upgraded the windows, kept with the divided lights because we like that look. We definitely opened it up as far as glass being introduced also in the garage door as a nice decorative element. We understand that Albany does not have a large amount of two-car garages along Cornell, but we thought if we could give it something more than just what you would see as a sectional metal door, it would be something we could add to the design and actually make it work for the house and as a whole.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Are there any questions of the architect? No? Okay. Thank you very much. We may call you back up.
Okay.
Thank you. And with that, I will open it up to the public for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to address the commission on this topic? Okay. Yes, please.
And when you're done, can you fill out a speaker card at the back of the room so we have your names for the record?
Albany people. My name is Linda Haymaker. I'm a resident in back on the side, and my background is in landscape architecture and environmental planning. I would just like to say that we're real glad to see the proposed plans are preserving the craftsman character of the home. To us, they seem like good plans. So my concern, and my husband's here tonight too, is basically really smaller details about issues in the back and concerning the landscape there and how that will affect us neighbors in backs. So did you get a copy of the email that I sent? Because the first one didn't go through today, so we wanted to make, okay. So basically, those are my points. I guess we don't have a planting plan up there, but.
I think we can pull up the site plan. There we go.
Yeah, okay, this is great. And do we have an elevation of the east elevation too?
I believe so.
We could start with that, because I just had one point about that to start with. And then the rest of it is mostly the landscape and flood plan.
One moment.
That looks like it. What we really like about the existing craftsmen is they have a. Sorry.
But we're recording this.
Okay,
So
all right. What we really like about one of the details we like on the existing Craftsman is that they have those offset porches where you, both in the front and in the back, you enter at a right angle, and that's real easy on noise levels and impact on the surrounding neighbors. So we would like to see if you might be able to have some sort of a small porch or something that goes to either side so that there's not two direct doors that are just going slam straight out like that. So that was the only thing that we had to say really architecturally.
And I'm sorry, that's mostly focused, you're mostly focused on the rear?
All on the rear, because that's where we are. We're in the back on the side. So that was point one in my email, and then plans, and then the plot plan. Seems like there's a big. So could we go to the design plan for the landscape? Yeah. There you go. It seems like that house is something like 40 feet, 3 feet wide, and so That means the terrace there is going to be almost somewhere close to 43 feet wide and about 28, 30 feet back. That seems like a great large space to put in some sort of a hardscape or terrace there. And we would like to see if it could be broken up at or about the same level that the setbacks for the adjoining houses go. Maybe put a sound wall, something like that in there. That would be something like wood at the bottom and lattice work at the top with plants growing up it to help try to rebound some of the sounds instead of going at an L angle out towards the neighbors and amplifying to kind of rebound back.
Okay.
And we'd also really love to see, I'm sorry, I kind of messed up a little bit there, but on the facade, there's 2 banks of windows. There's a bank of bay windows to the south, and then on the second floor, there's a pretty large divided light windows on the second floor. We would like to see an ornamental tree planted into that same terrace in front of the big windows to offset some of those sight lines from the house into the adjoining neighbors. So those would be maybe like a Japanese maple or flowering magnolia or something along those lines.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. You're referring to specifically the public or front of the
We're
building?
referring to the back area.
Oh, okay.
Mind if I go over here?
Yeah.
Just, there's windows here, 2
okay.
good, big, fairly big windows, and then a pretty large window on the second floor. So I'm talking about just a small planting area into the terrace where a tree could grow up and bring up this large expanse of hardscape. It would just soften that landscape considerably and give it a better sense of enclosure so that it wouldn't be sort of 2-dimensional, be 3-dimensional. And then the other things that I have to say basically regard plantings in the very back. There are some evergreen trees there. These people have a real nice fig tree. And by the way, these neighbors seem like they have green thumbs, so I don't think they're going to have much trouble growing things because whatever they put in there seems to do really well and thrive. But we'd like to see them maybe raise that fig tree up so that it's a little taller to reflect the size of the house so that it screens us from the back, and put some more evergreens in the back that are taller and more in keeping with this 28-foot height that the new house is going to be rather than the 14-foot height or whatever that it is now. So basically just bump the scale up of the landscape that is proposed. The plantings do seem quite small in stature, and so we would like them to be 15 to 20 feet and some evergreens in both of the corners in the back, which I mentioned specifics of.
So can I, so there's some design issues, but what I'm hearing is there's a lot, you're just concerned about privacy from your house.
We are concerned about privacy, visual
But
screening,
aesthetics.
noise screening.
Thank you.
And so what's there right now? Like what is between your yard and their yard?
There is between, in our corner where we are, there is a garage which is going to be demolished. There's an adjacent pittosporum tree that's about 20 to 25 feet tall. So we'd like to see maybe a couple more pittosporums added back there to make a little bit of a grove. They do have pittosporums already along the side of their driveway. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep those there during their construction, but it'd be nice if they could continue their pittosporums in a shrub area along the side and maybe into a tree form towards the back where it matters to us to create some more biomass there. Because it is a big structure, and it seems like, all of us have added on. We all had the 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, and, make it so that we're au courant. But we are in complete sympathy with them wanting to have some more space. So we would just like to just up the biomass to be a little bit more in keeping with the proposed new heights. So let's see. The only other thing was, it seemed, I had a question, there was something called MO in the back corner where that pull out of the old garage is going to go, and if that is a Morris or a mulberry, we'd like to specifically ask them not to plant that because it has real high allergen counts, and I happen to be extremely allergic to it, but it is a plant that is on do not plant lists in many municipalities due to health concerns. So we'd like to make sure that that is not put back in there, and an evergreen plant tree. So we're talking, 20-foot trees in the back. And maybe if they want to plant, it looks like they really like a lot of fruit and edibles and things like that. We're hoping that if they want to plant some of those kinds of trees in the back, that they could include maybe a lemon tree or an olive tree in the middle as a middle screen, and maybe put petrosperums in the corner to give them a breakup of their plant material, but also to give them enclosure in the garden and to give us screening and privacy.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to address the commission on this topic? Please, sir.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bill Zarchi. I live at 826 Talbot, directly behind the house at 821 Cornell. And I endorse everything that Linda said about we have all the same goals. We encourage people to stay in Albany and families to stay here. And we've enlarged our house also, although we didn't go up to a second story. When we moved in 30 years ago, we had a completely bare yard. And we planted foliage, and it's finally grown up enough that it screens a lot of the houses around us, and now they're going to raise the house behind us. With real respect for their right to do that, what we want to avoid is a big flat facade and a big solid yard, with all the possible implications of that for, particularly for sound. And I agree with Linda's specific ideas. I mean, I don't have her expertise in plans, but I agree with her ideas for breaking up the spaces, breaking up the facade a bit with plants, with soft stuff, and increasing the planting to regain the privacy that we're losing when the house goes up. A couple of other things that I wanted to mention, which was in Linda's email, and she sent one of the emails you received today, and I sent the other. And there's another one coming from our neighbors on the other side. I spoke with them a couple of hours ago. In addition to that, we'd like for all new lighting to be positioned in a thoughtful way so that it isn't reflecting directly out toward our house. Before that family moved into the house quite a while ago, there was a spotlight on the back of the house that pointed directly at our house, which was always awful. And we just hope that in keeping with the regulations of the City of Albany, that broad, bright lighting is not encouraged, and more spotty lighting and pointed straight down will be encouraged, so that there isn't glare from the house or from the yard that spills out onto the other houses. And this is something in being neighbors on our block for 30-plus years that we've always respected with regard to each other. We also notice in the guidelines that it provides for construction 7 days a week. It includes hours for Saturday and Sunday. We're strongly opposed, and I think Linda and Ron are, and our neighbors on the other side, opposed to regular weekend work. And we understand, having done our own remodels, that sometimes you have to work on a Saturday to get to a deadline, or when you have subs coming in, or you're pouring a foundation. But we really oppose giving blanket permission for them to work 7 days a week on a project that's obviously going to go for many months. And in addition to that, we're hoping that the construction will respect the fact that there are a number of retired people like ourselves who live around there and who are there all day. And when the wind in my backyard comes directly over their yard, and if the contractor's making a lot of sawdust at some point or spray painting and it's windy, we'd like them to have the good sense to stop. So that's about all I have to say, unless you have questions.
No questions for me? I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to address the commission on this item? Okay, see. Sure. Just please come up to the mic.
It seems like real early days yet, and I don't want to get overly picky about the inside details, which is their business, but it kind of reiterates our concerns about the lights. The technology has really changed a lot on indoor lighting in the last few years, as you know. And with these LEDs and halogens and stuff, they can be really terribly bright. So we'd like to make sure that any indoor lights, especially on the second floor, if you can keep from ceiling lights that would be glaring down and out, that's crucial for us because these penetrate everything. They can penetrate through foliage. They can keep us up all night long. We've had neighbors in back that we've talked to and we've had to mitigate for, and it's been fine. People have been happy to do that, but since they're starting from the beginning, any time they can use incandescent, that would be great because it is a softer light, but I know a lot of the stuff out there now is LED, so maybe something, if you could refrain from ceiling lights on those big bay windows, that would be really helpful, and have maybe sconces pointing the other direction and so forth, or dimmer areas or whatever. That would be a real plus for us.
Okay. Thank you. And are there any other comments from the public? With that, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for a discussion. And this is, just for the people in the audience, just to reiterate, this is today a study session. And so no formal action will be taken, just recommendations to the applicant. So anybody like to start?
I generally like the design. The massing is very attractive. The detail is very attractive. I guess if the applicant can take into consideration some of the neighbors' comments, particularly around the landscaping. The only real comment I had in design is the garage door in the front. We do have, and I appreciate the fact that you did meet the code with 2 parking spaces, or the applicant is. But if you look through our design guidelines, I think we're trying to break down the look and feel of the garage doors if you have a 2-space garage. So I would look for you to make some kind of modifications to that. Maybe Eric has some comments or thoughts on that. But that was the only real concern I had.
Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I also I wanted to at least encourage you to take into account some of the suggestions about landscaping, and I don't have the technical expertise to provide any more specific comments about what might be appropriate there, but generally speaking, if we can find something that works for the surrounding neighbors, that makes our job easier. I know one comment that was raised in one of the emails we got today that was also a comment or question I had, was just on the front, on the street-facing side. It looked like there was a plan to put it was on the landscape. To put a Coast live oak in that planting strip, and I just had my doubts about whether that really fits there. Yeah, so I guess, just some consideration of what other alternatives there might be for that front space.
Just a quick follow-up to that. We do have an approved street tree list, and so the arborist actually will consult with you at a certain point in time in the future to determine what's going to be most appropriate there based on the lighting and the dimensions.
Okay. And then on the construction schedule, since I know that's a concern for some of the neighbors, I just wanted to get staff's input on whether the condition of approval that's presented in the staff report about, I think it's, 8 to 6, 7 days a week, is that right?
Yeah, so those are our standard
Okay.
construction hours in the municipal code. From time to time, we have had applicants voluntarily reduce their hours or eliminate their hours altogether on the weekends, but that again is on a voluntary basis.
Sure, okay. So since those are the standard conditions, I guess I would encourage you to talk to the owner and see if it's something they would be willing to consider voluntarily. But other than that, I like the design overall and think it's an attractive looking building, so.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess in terms of the garage doors, I think it's great that you're putting lights or windows into the garage door. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it works out in terms of the actual clear opening, but I think it would be great if we could cut that into 2 garage doors. Obviously, you'd be losing space with the column in the middle, so something to consider. But I know that in general, we try to push carriage-style garage doors. And then in general, I guess I meant to ask earlier staff a couple questions. And so, and I was just looking at my notes and I realized I forgot to ask these. Some of my questions just kind of relate to the setbacks and what's shown on the plans versus what was discussed in the staff report. And so I was just hoping you could kind of clarify for me. I guess my question is, I wasn't sure what the actual setbacks were, because in the staff report, I think you state that they're meeting the front yard setback of 15 feet. But when I look at the plans, it looks like there's a projection that comes definitely, like, if you look at that front porch area, it comes beyond the front yard setback. And so I guess I'm just kind of curious.
So the code does allow for encroachments into setback areas, and so when it comes to front porches specifically, you can have an encroachment of up to 6 feet in the required front yard area.
Okay. And then I also had a similar comment about there's a little sort of entry on the side that encroaches into the side yard setback on the, I think it's our AV
This is
engineer.
the side porch
Yeah.
here. I will double check. I think you can have an encroachment of up to 2.5 feet.
Okay. Okay. Okay, good. I just want to make sure that's what's going on. Okay, that makes more sense then. Just because I think the setback to that front porch is like 13 feet versus the setback's 15.
It's actually a 2-foot side yard encroachment.
Okay. Okay. So okay, then that's great. Yeah, I mean, those are my real concerns basically in terms of planning was making sure that we adhere to the setbacks and we get those right. In terms of the style and design of the house, I appreciate that you're pushing forward with a craftsman style home. I like the wood brackets at the upper level. I appreciate the pergola. Excuse me. And I like that you're breaking up the massing of the building by having that terrace or deck at the second floor. I guess the only real thing I would, I guess, add is, because obviously there's a study session that you work with your neighbors. And although it seems like you might have a landscape designer on board, it seems like there might be also a great resource living next to you that you could also rely on. And so, yeah, I find that always helps projects the most, is that when you can work with the neighbors to come to a compromise. Obviously, you can't please everybody and you can't do everything that they need, but at the very least, trying to work with them is always encouraged by the commission. Yeah, I mean, in terms of that, and yeah, I guess I would second the notion. Unfortunately, our landscape architect, who's on the commission, is not here, Commissioner Kent, and I'm sure he would probably have similar comments in terms of breaking up the hardscape in the rear yard.
Eric, I had a question for you.
Yes.
One of the comments was on, I believe, the entry from the rear.
Oh,
Did you
yeah.
have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I guess I somewhat understand where the Linda Haymaker was coming from. Yeah, I guess I wasn't quite. I guess I wasn't quite sure that having a basically an entrance that's at a 90-degree angle from the doors will reduce noise. as much as we think it will, rather than having an entry that directly goes into the French doors. And while I'm looking at this, I'm just curious, when I'm looking at the landscape plan, it calls out a low wood deck beyond that rear entrance, whereas in the elevation, I only see what looks like the sort of stairway entrance to it. Okay, and so is one sort of guiding or leading? And you're referring to the low wood deck being a last minute insert? Okay. Okay, thank you. And just for the listening audience out there, the project architect just talked about how the low wood deck was possibly a last minute inclusion in the project, and that they might be considering a pergola in that back area. So yes, I think definitely when this comes up for a formal review, that just make sure that the plans and elevations are all coordinated. That always just helps us better understand it and process it better. And so, I mean, the addition of a pergola might be one way, and if it has green ivy on it, might be one way to also help break up the sight lines. But again, yeah, I would just sort of implore you to consider what some of the neighbors have suggested. And I think, and do I understand correctly that both of the side yards, or at least one of the side yards, is meant to be an actual active path to the backyard? Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, good. So yeah, I guess those are my only real comments. I don't know, do we have any authority in terms of like interior lighting to dictate? Besides just making a friendly recommendation?
I think you can make a friendly recommendation, you know, and, you know, I think given where the green standards are, and as the speaker mentioned, you know, the technology, I think we can get compliance out of the applicant.
Yeah, and we do have code requirements for exterior lighting?
We do require
Yes.
down tilt as a matter of practice on the exterior. Unfortunately, we have had to deal with situations where there's light spillage onto adjacent properties, you know, as it relates to code enforcement. So for projects that come before you for design review, we do have a condition that specifically requires down tilt lighting on the exterior.
Okay, great. So hopefully that will address the exterior lighting. Unfortunately, we don't have much authority in terms of requiring specific types of interior lighting besides meeting our green code standards. But again, I have just a feeling that the applicant will be receptive to your comments. And so I guess with that, unless there are any other comments.
A question for Ann.
Oh, please.
If we're to continue this to a date certain, the next meeting is the
26th.
26th. There's no meeting in August.
Right.
So is it possible to do the 26th?
Yeah, you could continue it to a date certain, then we wouldn't have to send you notices, and depending on.
It's a question for them if they'll be ready.
If they would be ready with the story polls and any revisions to the
Because
plans.
otherwise it's September.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so
So when you're ready, I'd be happy to move that.
okay, yeah, I'm ready to. I'm open for a motion.
Okay. I'll move, this is item 7.3, PA 17038 for 821 Cornell. We propose to move this to a date certain of July 26th.
Great. So there's been a motion. I will second it. There's been a motion. It's been seconded. All in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So so you have our sort of thoughts on the project and the public's thoughts, and this will be continued to our next meeting for a formal design review. And so there won't be any public notices distributed. So I'll just reiterate that to the audience here. that this will come up again for formal review on the 26th of this month, and that there will not be notices sent in the mail. So if you are interested in the project, keep that on your calendars. And yeah, we look forward to seeing the project then. And yes, make sure you get those story polls up. All right, good. Yes, well, not before that meeting, but at the meeting on the 26th, we'll
So-
go through a formal design
Yeah.
review process.
When they resubmit plans, we repost them on the website, and since we have your email address, we can also send those to you in advance.
Or the applicant could contact them
Or
directly.
or the applicant could contact you as well.
Okay, I guess with that, we'll close that item, and the next up is new business, which I believe we have
Excuse me.
none. You can give it to Ms.
hand
Hirsch.
to me. Yeah.
And we also have announcements, communications, and discussion. I believe we have nothing for that also. And then our next meeting is July 26th, 2017. And so with that, I will call to adjourn tonight's meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. All right, thank you.
Thank you.